Hey everybody, it's Matt here for our April Piano Lessons with Matt Q&A. It is April, right? Yes, April. It's been a busy week, so I'm a little out of it, to say the least. I have my coffee though, which is my beverage of choice, and I'm ready to go. I actually, a long time ago, I had a student he was maybe 8 or 9, and because I was always drinking coffee at our piano lessons, he insisted that his parents have a coffee cup for him when he practiced. I thought that was really cute. They did not feed him coffee, which is probably a good thing for an 8 or 9-year-old, but I still thought it was cute. Hey, before we start today, I have several questions from y'all, but I wanted to read an email I got, and I normally don't do this just because I think it's a little bit self-aggrandizing, but I was really touched by it, and I won't read the whole thing or say the person's name because I don't have permission to read this. This email actually was in response to my Fundamentals of Piano Technique course, which is not the Piano Lessons with Matt course that you might be a member of, but we cover some of the same things. So anyway, this person said, "Dear Matt, I've been working now since a few months with your material, and it is incredible how much my piano playing has improved. Since I play other instruments at a conservatory level, wind instruments, I'm okay with musical interpretation in general. What I really needed for the piano was a detailed technical explanation of finger, hand, body movements," and she goes on. Your course was precisely what I was looking for. In addition, with your approach, I am slowly managing to get rid of all the unnecessary tension in my hands and arms, which is not only very unpleasant, it also improves the music. Thanks for all this work for the community. It is really worth it. Kind regards. And again, I wouldn't normally read that, but I do want to tell you guys that I'm really touched by those emails because it is actually quite a lot of work to make these videos, more than people think. It takes, especially if you're a member of my Piano Lessons with Matt course and you're seeing the videos where I'm demonstrating and playing and the music. You know, in some cases, some of those videos might take 5 or 10 hours to make, even for a 10-minute video. I know it doesn't seem that way, and it's not like I have the most incredible production quality, but anyway, it makes a difference, and thank you all for the kind support. So we have several questions today, and if you do sign up for the weekly piano lessons, if you do subscribe to that, this is similar to the videos that you'll get every month. Not the lessons, but the additional videos of question and answer, because I like to answer questions that people have as they go through the course. And these questions are at all different levels. I firmly believe that just like watching a piano masterclass, even if you're watching someone who's more advanced than you or getting the answer to a question from someone more advanced than you, that's still helpful. And the same also applies if you're listening to an answer who's from someone who is in previous material that you've already covered. I think it's always helpful just to kind of review this stuff. So take it for whatever level you're at. Okay, first question is, does my thumb have to be over the keys? I have heard different things. Does my thumb have to be over the keys? Absolutely not. In fact, for most good technique, unless you're using the thumb, it probably won't be over the keys. And let me go ahead and move the camera so you can see, oops, sorry, a better angle here. And I'll show you with my left hand. If you're playing something that's sort of a 5-finger pattern, where maybe you play with your thumb, remember that as you go to your second finger, you can often release because you want actually a straight line here through the wrist and down the forearm. And if you keep your thumb in like this, you see you're cramped here, and you don't want to be cramped. Okay, so generally speaking, there are many, many cases. It's not a hard and fast rule. There's never 100% with piano playing because it depends on your particular context of what you're playing and also your hand structure. But there are many cases where you would want the thumb not to be over the keys. Let me brighten this just a little bit. Okay. So let me just play a little, and you'll see how my thumb actually moves. You see? Notice my arm is actually going in as I approach my thumb, and then it's over the keys. Now, if I have a chord, you know, if I'm playing something with more than one note, obviously in that case, let me see, you can see over my hand. Sorry for how shaky it looks. But obviously in that case, you see, you're going to have your thumb and your other finger over the keys. But there is kind of this old, what would you call it? It's called an old wives' tale. I'm not sure. Whatever it's called, a myth that you should always have your thumb over the keys, and that's not the case. A lot of what we deal with in piano playing is, piano teaching is sometimes like getting rid of these old myths. So I hope that answers your question. The main rule of thumb, pardon the pun, is it doesn't matter if your thumb is over the key or not. You want to watch that hand alignment that we've talked about in lessons with the fingers you're using. And if you have more than one finger, you want that alignment to go through both of the fingers. Okay, next question. I am confused about legato playing. It's not uncommon. Can you demonstrate this? Are there any exercises that might help? I need a little sip of water for this one. Legato playing, for those of you who haven't reached this point, simply means one note connected to the next. So in other words, this is non-legato playing. You see there's a space. I'm really exaggerating, but there's a space in between the notes. With legato playing, it's sort of like when you're walking. When you walk from one foot to another, your one foot touches and then the other foot releases. So with legato playing, it's one finger touches and then the other finger releases so that the sounds join together, you see. So this is an example of legato playing. You see? And I'll move again so you can see my fingers. I'm sorry, I tend to do this quite a lot because I don't like people just to be looking at my hands the whole time, but then you need to see closer. And I'll show you here with my left hand. You see, so here I'm on my second finger, and then as I go to my third finger, then my second finger comes up. And let me adjust the camera just a little bit so that you can see at a better angle, because I'm going to show you an exercise that you can do that'll be very, very helpful for legato playing. And that is to very, very slowly play from one finger to the next. So say from second finger, and now I'm going to play my third finger, and I'm going to go super, super slow here because this is very easy to tense up. I'm going to go to my third finger, and then after I play that third finger, I'm going to slowly lift up my second finger. Okay, now I'm going to go from my third finger to my fourth finger. After I play my fourth finger, I'm going to slowly lift up my third finger. So this is like super, super, super slow. You see? And it seems absurd, and at first it will feel like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely insane. But you can actually develop quite a lot of finger control. And then what that translates into is, you see? You see, that's connected in legato. So that's what we mean by legato playing. If you have trouble with this amount of control at first, don't worry. Let me adjust the camera back. It's totally normal. It would actually be very abnormal to be able to just immediately play legato and have all sorts of control. So just don't worry if that kind of finger control is an issue. You're definitely in the majority if it takes time. But that's a good first exercise you can do, even just from one finger to the next. Just try it with 2 fingers, and that's what it means to play legato. So I hope you find that exercise helpful. Okay. Do I have to count out loud all the time? So I'm guessing that you're probably in lesson 3 or 4, and we've been talking a lot about counting. The answer is no, but you should. And what I mean by that is it's better to err on the side of counting, especially at the beginning, because I found that most students don't like to do it, and it's such an important skill. So if you find that the reason you don't want to count out loud is that you can't play as well, it's like this is something else I have to think about, I would count out loud. At least, say 70% of the time. You really should have no trouble, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That should not be an issue for you. And if it is, that's okay, but it means you have to develop that skill. And the reason is not that you won't be able to play without counting out loud. The reason is, as you get into harder music, it's going to be a huge issue because there will be problems of counting and technical problems where if you're unable to count out loud, if you don't have that skill set, there's just not a way to discuss them and to work with them. So it's one of those things that you can get away with early, but will hurt you down the road if you don't learn how to do it. So right off the bat, I would count out loud as much as possible. And then of course, when you're playing for enjoyment, you don't have to. Okay. When I add chords to my left hand, I feel as though my right hand has trouble playing the melody in time. What can I do? I'm gonna have to take a guess at exactly what you mean with that. I'm guessing is that you mean, I'll use the Ode to Joy again, that you're having trouble getting to the next chord, and then you feel kind of rushed in the right hand, or maybe if you have the metronome clicking, that you're having to slow down. So let me address both of those things. If you have the metronome clicking, always remember that you can add a click or two while you're thinking. So if you're changing from one chord to the next, and then you're trying to figure out what's going on here in the left hand, just add click, click, click. So if it's like click, 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 click. It's totally okay to practice with pauses like that, and actually it's preferable. What you actually don't want to do, and I think this is what you're experiencing, is you're trying to keep it going, and then your left hand can't get there in time. You can't make the switch in time, and then things start to sound jilted. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but to stay in time, I would play out of time. In other words, I would add a couple beats before the change, so that you can think about what's coming up. So sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, click, click. 1, 2, 3, 4, click, click. 1, 2, 3, 4. I always tell students, if you didn't practice and you want the lesson to go well, or to just get through the lesson time, just pretend like you need lots and lots of time in between beats, because I always tell them, I will sit there forever. I prefer that you go slowly and think about what's coming up. What actually drives me nuts as a teacher is if someone's trying to go too fast, and then it's kind of like the stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. So if you need to, go ahead and add clicks. Just be aware that you're doing it so that you don't learn it with the extra beats, of course. Okay, a few more questions. I have heard that I should never look at my hands when I play, but I think it is easier that way. I usually tend to memorize my music. Is there a rule for this? This is another one of those myths that we're always combating. I'm always combating, at least, because I have my own personal opinion about it. My opinion is it's totally cool to memorize the music and often preferable. And there's a reason why people who are professional performers tend to memorize the music. That's because they can concentrate more on other things once it's memorized. What I would say is, don't memorize the music to the exclusion of learning to read the notes. But if you've played a piece 20 times and it's like, I have it memorized, go ahead and look down. This is just another one of those old myths that's kind of stuck around. And I think, what it comes from is that when people are trying to teach a student to read, it's very common for children to just immediately look down and not want to look at the music. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with memorizing looking down. I will say, though, it is good to develop the sense of what the keyboard is like so that you don't have to look down. So, for example, I'm going to keep my eyes on the camera here and see, I can tell you that I know exactly what notes I am playing. Like, that's a C, that's an F, that's an A flat, that's a D flat, that's a G, that's a G, that's a G, that's a C, that's a C. You want to have a sense of that layout, but that comes over a long time. And actually, sometimes when people don't look down ever, suddenly they look down and it's like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before, and it's very confusing for them. So you really want to be able to do both. I hope that answers that question. Do you have any tips for motivation? I am a busy adult and sometimes my days get so filled that it's tough for me to sit down at the piano. Yes, I do have a tip for motivation. It is actually at the end of your question. The tip is sit down at the piano no matter what, but you only have to do it for a minute or even 10 seconds. And what I mean is, what's more important is to fight that resistance towards sitting down at the piano. So what I always tell my adult students to do is to find a time of day, especially if you're working, that is just your time of day that you're sitting at the piano bench. And that can literally mean, I sat at the piano bench, I'm done. Usually for adults, that'll be the second they get home from work. I actually say, if you can help it, if you have a normal 9 to 5, do it before you even eat, before you do anything. Just the second you get in the door, make a beeline to the piano, sit down. And if it's just an awful day and you literally don't have any time to practice, sit down and get up. If it's just a resistance, you'll sit down, you'll start playing, you'll get into it, and it won't be so bad. But that, for me, has been the biggest psychological motivator, is just the ability to fight that resistance of sitting down at the piano. And myself as well. I mean, I'm running a music school. I have lots of teachers that work for me. I have the blog. I have these lessons that I produce, and it's a lot of time. It's kind of ironic that a lot of times I'm looking at the piano and then it's like, oops, I forgot to do my own practice. So to have that specific time of day where you're sitting down is absolutely the most helpful thing you can do. A really good book that I'm reading right now about that is called The War of Art. You might have heard of this. Some of it I don't agree with, but it's The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, if you can see it. Yeah, I don't agree with some of the more abstract stuff he goes into towards the end, but it's just a great series of notes on what it feels like to have that kind of resistance towards something like practicing. The other book that I think is really great for motivation that I don't see in my pile of books, I got piles of books everywhere, is, oh gosh, I just can't think of it. I'll think of it later, and maybe I'll mention it in the next Q&A if someone reminds me. But try The War of Art, you know, just in terms of talking about how to fight that resistance. Another good time of day is just first thing when you're waking up. That's typically actually when I do it for myself, is first thing when I'm having my coffee, because I know that the second that I open that email, it's going to just be, you know, the day's over, because I'm just going to be at the mercy of whatever fire I'm trying to put out or whatever. And it looks like that's it. So I hope you find that helpful. I'm still trying to think of the name of that book and I can't. Oh gosh, I'll just append it as a note to this and go look it up. I hope you find that helpful. I will see you in May for the May Q&A. Remember, you can always email me your questions. These Q&As are supplemental to the weekly lessons you get as a Piano Lessons with Matt member. So as long as you're a current monthly member, you'll also have access to these Q&As, and I try to get through as many of them as I can. Sometimes there's a ton and I'll have to kind of put one off till the next month, but I'm usually pretty good about it. And hope you found this helpful. See you at the next video.